some considerations in South Asia are sustaining observational networks, operation and maintenance issues, interoperability, and data sharing. Session 5 will feature a discussion on development of strategic plans for observational networks and enhancing data sharing arrangements in the region to improve detection and warning for extreme events. Session 5 will be co-chaired by Dr. Jagadeshwar Karmacharya, Deputy Director General of Department of Hydrology and Meteorology, Nepal, and Dr. Chowmu U, Director General of Department of Meteorology and Hydrology, Myanmar. The panel discussion will be moderated by Dr. Alice Juarez of World Bank and Dr. KJ Ramesh of RIMES. Dr. Jagadesh, I now hand over the floor to you, please, sir.
Thank you very much, Ruby, for your introduction. Firstly, I would like to thank RIMES and all the organizers to providing me this opportunity to co-chair today's session, which is a very interesting one regarding this observation network. We have 5 presentations in today's first half of the session, and we have distinguished speakers talking on 5 different topics. And our first speaker is Mr. Naeem Faisal, Director, Climate Data Processing Center from Pakistan Meteorological Department. And he graduated from the University of Karachi with master's degree in mathematics. His area of responsibility includes supervision of climate data processing activities, development and maintenance of website, restructuring existing program, technical reports writing, and supervision of administration, budget, process, and other daily activities. So he will be speaking on SAHF priorities for enhancing and sustaining observation networks. Over to you, Mr. Naeem. Thank you.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are. Please proceed.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair, for such a nice introduction. First of all, very good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all distinguished participants. I also like to thank RIMES and South Asia Hydromet Forum for giving me the opportunity to be the part of this 3rd annual South Asia Hydromet Forum. My name is Nadeem Faisal and I am from Pakistan Meteorological Department. I am also the member of South Asia Hydromet Forum working group on observational network. I have a very brief talk on South Asia Hydromet Forum priorities for enhancing and sustaining observations network. Next slide, please. In my first slide, I will talk about some common issues in operation and the maintenance of observational network in the region. The first issue which I would like to highlight is the inadequate infrastructure facilities, particularly at observational sites which are located at largely unpopulated region and remote areas. These facilities includes the communications system problem, the power supply electricity problem, and also the unavailability of access to those remote sites and the transportation problem. The second issue which I would like to highlight is the capacity development. There's often shortage of trained and skilled meteorological observer. But the core issue which I would like to highlight is the large spatial gaps of observation in some areas, both in surface and upper air observations. Next slide, please. Now, what are the priority needs for enhancing and sustaining observation networks? First, there is need to give the high priority to fill the gaps in surface observations, because the more and the quality data we get, the higher and accurate forecast one can generate. And there also a need for strengthening upper air observations network, because upper air network of radio sending can provide a crucial data, temperature, humidity, wind speed, and wind direction, which are essential for the studies of atmospheric circulation, extreme weather forecasting, and many other meteorological applications. There are also need to maximize the observation from sparsely represented area in the region like ocean and mountains. The ocean, we know that it is an integral component of the Earth climate system, and it covers a large part of our region. And there is also need for the expansion of automatic weather stations network. AWSs are taking on a rapid increasing role in getting meteorological observation. Now they have been used to increase the network densities and also used especially in remote and largely unpopulated regions where access is difficult. In the last but not least, there is need to enhance the regional data exchange. In this regard, I would like to draw your attention towards World Meteorological Congress recently approved initiative of a unified policy for strengthening of international exchange of observations and other Earth system data. This unified system provides a comprehensive update of the policy guiding the international exchange of data. That's all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nadeem, for a very concrete and short presentation. Now we'd like to move to our second speaker. Our second speaker is Mr. Antonio Rio from World Bank. And he will share updates on WMO observations and data exchange infrastructures. Mr. Antonio? Anthony?
Yeah, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. It's Anthony Ray here. I'm the Director of the Infrastructure Department at WMO. I seem to have sent you the wrong slide deck, and I apologise for that. But the content is the same. So please forgive my slide backgrounds, which are actually for the WMO Region 6 meeting, which is on Friday. It's the same basically. So if we could go to the next slide, I'm going to expand a little bit on what Mr. Faisal from Pakistan has just said about data exchange and about the unified data policy. So first of all, international exchange of data is one of the major purposes of WMO, and it's framed within the WMO Convention under Article 2. And to really enable international data exchange, which underpins, if you think about the value chain, this underpins the global numerical weather prediction systems that are the foundation of service delivery of most national meteorological and hydrological services. It requires an understanding of requirements, and then it requires a willingness on behalf of the collectors of the observations to make those observations available. So there's an element of outreach and advocacy around that. And in relation to the WMO data policy over the last 2 years, and if you probably over the entire 70-odd years of operation of WMO, we've been doing that. Then you need a policy, which is a general commitment of national governments to exchange certain data for certain purposes. The data policy we just talked about. the regulatory material, which is the agreement on the specifics of the data exchange. So what observations are taken, when, where, and how. And this is within the things like the WIGOS manual and what I'll talk about in a minute, the Global Basic Observing Network. And then we just heard about some of the capacity and capability gaps within Pakistan and some of the gaps in the observing system. And this is where also financial and technical support is required if needed through capacity development. If we can go to the next slide, please. So at the World Meteorological Congress in October, we approved 3 linked strategic infrastructure initiatives. One, as already mentioned, is the WMO Unified Data Policy, which recommits the organisation and its members to the free and open exchange of what we call core data. And that is defined in the regulatory material, and GBON, the Global Basic Observing Network, is an example. It's a quid pro quo system whereby members provide their observational data into the global system. In return, they draw back the high quality model output that they might need to support their operations. Linked to this, in terms of regulatory material, we approved the Global Basic Observing Network. It restates the requirements that were there in the former WMO Resolution 40 that some of you might be familiar with, increasing the requirements in terms of spatial resolution and also temporal resolution. And Mr. Faisal mentioned automatic weather stations, and these will be necessary in many instances to meet the requirements of GBON, because the temporal resolution that is asked for under GBON is hourly. So it sets out requirements for spatial distribution of both surface stations measuring pressure, temperature, humidity, precipitation, and wind, and upper air stations, so basically radiosonde observations. So this is, we recognise it's an impost on members, and some members will need to increase the density of networks to meet the requirements. Others will just need to increase the amount of data that's shared internationally. And the third initiative that was approved is the Systematic Observations Financing Facility, which was approved by Congress and which was launched at the COP26 a couple of weeks ago. And this provides technical and financial support for GBON implementation where it's most needed. Now, the focus here is on least developed countries and small island developing states. So it's not everyone, and we recognise that there's still a gap there, but it is designed to assist those members who need it the very most. If we just go to the next slide, I recognise I need to be quite brief. So under the Unified Data Policy Resolution, this Resolution 1, members shall, so this is a binding, provide on a free and unrestricted basis core data. And the core data is not defined in the policy, it's defined in the regulatory material, in the GBON and in the WIGOS manual. Members should, so this is non-binding, but something that members should do, provide the recommended data, which might be additional data like hydrological observations, ocean observations, radar observations, and so on. So it's not binding, but it's encouraged. And then there's a third provision about members providing without charge data, recommended data to research and education, and so on. And then there's a request to our regional associations to start the implementation of this. If we go to the next slide. So GBON, the Global Basic Observing Network, this was Resolution 2, and it's aimed at addressing what, again, Mr. Faisal mentioned. We have some large areas of the globe where observations are patchy. We have big areas in Africa, some in Asia, some in the Pacific, where there are not enough systematic observations to fully support global numerical weather prediction, climate reanalysis, climate prediction. And so GBON is aimed to kind of close those gaps and bring members up. But as I said, we approved also the SAHF, the Systematic Observations Financing Facility, to help to assist some of our members to reach those goals. Next slide, please. Yes, so the resolution 3 of the Congress was SAHF and members who have the capacity were encouraged to financially contribute. We do have a number of contributors to the SAHF, so it will be launching into operation in mid-2022. Provide expert readiness, technical advisories, and other forms of support. And then, urging members who qualify as beneficiaries to take advantage of the SAHF to achieve sustained compliance with GBON. So you can see there, going back to that triangle I showed earlier, that 3 initiatives were closely linked to one another. Next slide, please. Okay, I think, sorry, that is intended for the other audience. So I think in the interest of time, I'll stop there and pass on back to you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Antonin, for your very informative presentation on recent development on observational data exchange infrastructures. I think one of the initiatives you mentioned, that systematic observation financing. There was some sort of agreement, I think, during the COP and our Secretary General, among other distinguished parties were there to launch that event, and I had the pleasure to attend that. So we are very hopeful that this will support enhancing observation gaps in key areas soon. So with that note, thank you once again, and I would like to invite Mr. Clement Albergal, who is a climate application scientist on terrestrial side working on European Space Agency. And he's responsible for the lakes, fire, soil moisture, and RECAP 2 project, and also for the UOST project. And his main area of responsibilities are in land surface modeling, remote sensing of soil moisture and vegetation, as well as data assimilations. So he will present about ESA data and product and possible support to the South Asia region. Over to you, Clement.
Thank you very much for the introduction and for having me. Taking a climate change angle this morning, I will give you a brief overview of 2 initiatives I am involved in at the European Space Agency. The Climate Change Initiative, where we develop satellite Earth observation-based data set for climate monitoring and understanding, and then some ESA Earth observation program in support of international development, where those Earth observation-based data sets, amongst others, can also be used for specific application. And I will illustrate those activities based on recent studies. But first, I'd like to give you some background. Climate change is arguably the greatest environmental challenge facing Earth in the 21st century. And the consequences of a warming climate are far-reaching. And with worsening impact predicted for the natural environment and society for generations to come, climate change is high on political, strategic, and economic agendas worldwide. The United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC, is leading the international effort to combat climate change and limit global warming to well below 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial eras, as set out in the 2015 Paris Agreement for Climate. To achieve this objective and to take decision on climate change mitigation and adaptation, the UNFCCC requires systematic observations of the climate system. And that is precisely why the role of space agencies, such as the European Space Agency, is crucial to climate and climate action. So the European Space Agency has been dedicated to observing Earth from space ever since the launch of its first weather satellite back in 1977. And this slide illustrates the Earth observation mission we have launched over time. With the launch of a range of different types of satellites over the last 40 years, we are now better placed to understand the complexities of our planet, particularly with respect to global change. Today's satellites are used to forecast the weather, answer important Earth science questions, provide essential information to improve agricultural practices, maritime safety, help when disaster strikes, and all manner of everyday application. The need for information from satellites is growing at an ever-increasing rate. With ESA as world leader in Earth observation, the agency remains dedicated to developing cutting-edge spacebound technology to further understand the planet, improve daily lives, and support effective policy making and monitoring for a more sustainable future. Next slide, please. Right. So in 2010, ESA has established the Climate Change Initiative, CCI, in response to the UNFCCC need for systematic global observation. The CCI is a coordinated research and development program amongst ESA member states that generates robust, long-term, global satellite-derived datasets for key indicators of climate change known as essential climate variable, ECVs. These ECVs are specified by GCOS, the Global Climate Observing System, and support not only the climate information needs of the UNFCCC and IPCC, but also the wider climate community. And the CCI does this by harnessing Earth observation archive generated over the last 40 years and combining them with data from third-party and current mission, including the Copernicus Sentinel mission. Under CCI, we currently have 23 dedicated ECV project teams developing 21 ECVs, as you can see on this slide. Each of these projects addresses a specific variable in the oceanic, terrestrial, and atmospheric domains. We also have horizontal cross-ECVs activities, such as sea level budget closure, that I will illustrate in the next slide. And all those data are free and open access through the CCI data portal. So it has been emphasized in the past few weeks, particularly in the context of COP26, that global average sea level is rising. And this is a direct response to a warming climate. Heating of the climate system has caused global mean sea level rise through ice loss on land and thermal expansion from ocean warming. This rate is on average 2.6 millimeter per year over the course of the near 30-year satellite altimetry record we have from the first TOPEX Poseidon mission in the 90s, followed by JSON 1, 2, 3, and now Sentinel-6. A recent study by Nichols et al., published in Nature Climate Change, have used data from the sea level CCI project in combination with land subsidence data to determine the relative sea level rise at the coast. They weighted the results by population to reflect the potential risk to people, and they found that coastal inhabitants experience sea level rise that is 4 times faster than the global average over the past 2 decades, between 7 and 9.9 millimeter per year against the global mean sea level of 2.6 millimeter per year. Investigating relative changes in sea level revealed very interesting trends around the world. Coastal areas in North America experience falling sea level, results as a glacier weight declining and land lifting. And this uplifting coast, however, while occupying 12% of the global coastline, were found to be sparsely inhabited. In contrast, more than 1 in 5 people living along the coastline were found to live in a coastal areas experiencing a relative increase of sea level of 10 millimeter or more per year, despite the fact that it concerned only 1% of the world coastline. The region of most concern cited in this study included South, Southeast, and East Asia, as the area has many subsiding deltas and coastal floodplains with growing coastal megacities and host more than 70% of the world coastal population. In the study, the authors call for the introduction of policies and strategies to maintain the land elevation of coastal cities to guarantee the safety and security of large population against rising sea and disaster intensified by climate change, particularly in the developing world. Next slide, please. So, in another recent study, also published in the journal Nature, our team from the Glacier CCI project have revealed that ice mass losses from glacier worldwide were on average 267 gigatons each year between 2009 to 2019. Over the past 20 years, the world's glaciers have lost almost as much volume as the 2 ice sheets, Greenland and Antarctica combined. The rate of ice loss from glaciers worldwide also appears to have accelerated in recent years. Between 2000 and 2004, the research team has estimated that glaciers have lost 207 gigatons of ice per year, rising to nearly 300 gigatons from 2015. Alaska, Iceland, and the Alps being the region where melting occurred the fastest. Over the study period, ice loss from glacier has contributed at 21% to observed sea level rise. And this places glaciers as the 3rd contributor to sea level rise just after thermal expansion of ocean, water, and losses from the Greenland and Antarctic ice sheet. Next slide, please. So just for sake of illustration, this picture is representing how Shanghai will look like with a rise of just 2 degrees Celsius and its subsequent sea level rise. Next slide, please. Over the last, thank you. Over the last decade, the European Space Agency has also been exploring the field of development cooperation as a long-term prospect for the use of satellite-based environmental information in the operations of development assistance activities. And the strategy and main focus has been to work with the international organization in the development sector, the International Financial Institution, IFIs, such as the World Bank, the African Development Bank, the Asian Development Bank. During an initial phase, ESA initiated many small-scale demonstration of Earth observation-based environmental information in support of IFI projects and programs. And this initial work raised significant interest in these IFIs to take the collaboration with ESA on Earth observation further, with more strategic activities in several key thematic domains under what was called the Earth Observation for Sustainable Development Initiative, EO4SD. Next slide, please. And those projects included water resources management and climate resilience, to name a few. Both clusters, water and climate resilience, have, for example, used Earth observation as a reliable and cost-effective method for large-scale monitoring and analyzing of water bodies, both temporary and permanent in nature. The water management cluster has also used Earth observation to assess, for example, the potential impact of dam build for hydropower purposes on floodplains that are important for local community relying on agriculture. The EO4SD Climate Resilience Cluster aimed to provide insight about the potential of Earth observation to support climate resilience decision-making at the regional and national scale. The cluster also builds capacity in IFI client states, allowing stakeholders to autonomously use Earth observation-based information for climate resilience decision-making, thereby ensuring long-term sustainability. This project has finished last summer, but the focus on climate resilience at ESA will continue through a new activity, the Global Development Assistance, GDA, that aims at transferring Earth observation services systematically into development finance. Next slide, please. To illustrate very briefly some work from the EO4SD Climate Resilience Cluster in Tajikistan, they have assessed rangelands degradation due to climate change, and they have collaborated with the FAO and IFAD to jointly identify climate vulnerable pastoral communities and analyze the rangelands degradation. Next slide, please. Our climate resilient cluster provided Earth observation rangeland condition changes over the period 2000 to 2020, along with climate indicator over the degraded pastures to assess the climate change impact and soil erosion rates to determine land degradation. The rangeland and climate products supported another very concrete action, the climate rationale for IFAD to solicit a co-funding from the Green Climate Fund. And this work has been presented last week at COP26. Next slide, please. I just want to conclude to say that today, all land masses are observed every 5 days at 10 meters spatial resolution with Sentinel-2 and every 12 days at 20 meters with Sentinel-1. This has never happened before, and this data is freely and openly available to anybody in the world. That's something like 250 terabytes of satellite data distributed per day with long-term continuity well beyond 2030. And this creates great opportunities, but also very complex logistical challenges. And we must develop ambitious plans to tackle these challenges in, for example, big data-enabled environment. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Clement, for elaborating the work of European Space Agency and how it has been involved in monitoring the Earth observation for international requirement of the international development, as well as how it has helped make estimation of or measure the impacts of climate change, for example, in the Tajikistan, and how it has helped in formulating or development of the GCF proposal. I think this is very useful. And in addition, you also elaborated about the availability of data, satellite data up to 10 meter resolution for every 5 days. I think this information, some of these we are already familiar, but others I think we came to know with your presentation. So surely I think this will provide an opportunity to collaborate maybe with ESA and then develop some regional initiative in collaboration with RIMES, I hope. Thank you very much for that. Now I would like to move on to our next presentation. So our next presenter is Ityas Das, who is the team leader and system design in RIMES, and he heads system research and development division there. He has developed and supervised planning, design, implementation of several decision support systems, solution, and processes that meets early warning and domain-specific user needs effectively and efficiently. He also leads the implementation of impact-based forecasting, data mining, analysis, and prioritizing, mainstreaming, and application of weather and climate information in decision-making for critical sectors. He has operational work experience in more than 15 countries, including Africa, Asia, and the Pacifics. So I would like to invite him to present RIMES regional data sharing mechanism. Thank you.
Thank you, co-chair and chair. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone joining this third edition of the annual South Asia Hydromet Forum. First of all, I would like to thank the team, organizing team from Bank and RIMES for providing me the opportunity to discuss about this data sharing mechanism that we have been recently working on. And in this particular presentation, I will be specifically discussing about the contribution of RIMES regional data sharing mechanism for harnessing the state-of-the-art data analytics support and bringing in more innovations in providing institutional practices under this SAHF priority activities that was defined. So to go forward, what we have seen from the last 2 days or so is speakers mostly highlighting on the significance of the data, which is more specifically on observed weather data for the improved climate services that actually we want to provide to the region. So data remains in the core of this value chain process. If you talk about starting from observations to the end user. And what we have seen is this data collected locally at a country level, but its true utility remains in a regional level and at a national to regional level. And for that purpose, we have basically started this data sharing initiative between RIMES, NHMS, and ECMWF, which is to ensure that this data available at this local level or national level can be utilized further to both help global centers to improve the quality of forecast that is available for the region, as well as this would help the countries to have access to these improved products through this particular mechanism. And these data sets, of course, we believe are complementing to the already ongoing, I think, we have discussed just now about the WMO's initiative, including SAHF or G1, which are already working in the region and can be utilized in this process and would be basically complementing to this overall GTS network, which is widely available in the region and it's being shared. So what we would like to also emphasize here, the data through this process are now flowing into the data exchange platform from 14 countries. And as we discussed, there are other countries which are also in the process of sharing these data sets with France. And with this process, we would like to also emphasize that this data, of course, we understand the interest of the countries, will be kept completely secured under supervision, would be shared only with ECMWF and not outside this environment. And in the future, tools can also integrate data from other this initiative that we have just discussed. It could be from G1 as well. And I was very interested to see also the European Space Agency, and also like what Dr. Jagdish mentioned about integrating some of these products under this data exchange platform would be also critical as we move forward. So this data exchange platform, I'll just go a little deeper into what we're actually trying to achieve here. Is basically an integrated platform that we want to put together here, where we will have observation data collection platform, where we would collect data on a real time and as well as on archive mode from the meteorological services in the region. We are integrating an automated quality control process, which is obviously following the WMO quality standard. We are also working on a graphical engine where meteorological services can use this tool to visualize the forecast data sets that is flowing in from the European Center for Medium Range Weather, ECMWF, in this process. And it will be also available to the Met services in the region. As we speak, we can actually also see these forecast products. In addition to this, what we are trying to integrate into the system also, and again, this is something that is coming in very frequently as demand from the countries, how to access the digital version of these data sets, more specific to the country, region, or even for more sectoral application, how we can actually use generate whether it's a Bayesian polygon or it is a provincial level information, or even at a local location specific information. And those are the computational methods that we are also integrating into the platform. So what this would provide to the user as an opportunity to not just see and visualize the forecast, but also customize the digital data sets and access it in a form that they want to use. For example, it could be a scientific data form in NetCDF, or it could be a CSV form that can be used in other sectoral applications, for example, if it is a hydrological model answer. And finally, one of the, again, the other critical component that we've been discussing with Met Services is, providing real-time verification and analytical support that can also be part of this process to integrate, both observed and climate data together to see the skill of the models. So this is just going into little detail of the tool, what it can do in terms of providing, both the graphical support. So users, here when I say users, basically here it is mostly the meteorological services can use the platform to see and download the graphical forecast products into the local machine. They can always download the NetCDF or the climate data format into the system and use it for any other third-party visualization tool. And at the same time, they can also generate customized data sets. Both, again, they can download it to the local machine for the decision-making process, or they can also use it in the system itself to see the trend and the analysis for a particular region or a particular basin, or even for a particular point. And we have now integrated this WMO standard verification process into this platform, where we can compare. For now, we are comparing the and in fact testing now the ECMWF forecast product, which are already integrated into the system. And we can, on a real time, we can see the different verification statistics that are defined by the World Meteorological Organizations in terms of having understanding of the deterministic forecast versus the observed synoptic data sets, the threshold based indicators, probabilistic forecast, which of course is now the trend where we can see the skill of the model, the ensemble members, and then generate the ROCs scores and reliability score to understand how skillful are these probabilistic forecasts for the region. And of course, we can also do special comparison of these products. The advantage of this particular system being, we have access to both the archive data sets as well as to the forecast data sets on the same platform. So it gives us the opportunity to, compare these as the Met services use these products. In a futuristic view, of course, some of the things that I mentioned, we are already working on integrating the quality control system, the analytical services to understand the trends of observed and as well as to compare it to forecast. And we're also working on towards integrating the machine learning, or artificial intelligence-based technologies to further improve this forecast to generate more location-specific and more accurate products that will be useful for sector-specific application, and as well as for detecting and the extreme events in a particular region. So that is also we are working towards providing an alert based on any particular event that is expected through monitoring of these events through this system itself. And of course, we are now also integrating the value addition that Met services can implement by themselves. So it will be actually providing an access to the Met services to both change the digital information as well as graphics to finalize the forecast products. So it basically provides also a customized interface to the Met services to generate the forecast and disseminate. So this is my last slide, and what I want to highlight here is that of course we know there are many visualization tools that are already in place and are being used. What we are trying to do here is not just build a visualization platform only, but rather bring more of a service-oriented platform. And this is again a part of the the SAHF process where we are developing what we call a knowledge hub. And under this knowledge hub, this visualization and analytical platform is actually one of the components. And what this also would support is in terms of integrating the forecasters forum, where the meteorological services in the region will be coming together and collaborating and discussing on the emerging technologies, the forecast processes. I think this we have been discussing also in the 4 thematic areas, which includes the IBF impact-based forecasting, the numerical weather prediction system or improvement, or the capacity building, or the observational network system itself. So this platform basically provides both one single stop access to the analytical services, where you can see and compare the data sets, products, forecast, and information. And as well as you can actually have a chance to discuss with both the experts in the field through this platform, compare, and of course we are also planning to integrate a forecasters forum, which will be providing access to a regular discussion between the meteorological services in the region. And so this is again under the process of development under the SAHF priority activities that were developing, and we hope this process in turn would actually help Met Services to strengthen their capacity in terms of providing support to all the sectoral agencies in each of the countries and overall for the region. So thank you so much again for the chair and the team for providing me the opportunity to discuss about this platform. And we are again on the development phase, and we will continue to collaborate with all the Met Services in the region to improve on this platform. Incorporate all your feedbacks and the process which you're already doing, and hope this tool will be useful for all the Met Services in the region to improve the products and services. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Das, for presenting about the platform being developed by RIMES. Actually, we had an opportunity to have a demonstration of that platform some time back, and we are actually eagerly waiting with excitement to have access to that platform. And as Dr. Das has just mentioned, I think, I hope it is in the final phase, and we will be able to have a look at it soon. Moving on, now I would like to introduce our final speaker, Mr. Kumar Kargaswayam, representing the private sector engaged in strengthening observation networks. He is the director, regional manager at the Earth Networks, and has over the last 8 years, he has been focusing on expanding the company's weather and environmental network in Asia through the establishment of strategic partnerships, and also through direct sales to stakeholders in a number of vertical market segments. These segments include government agencies in agriculture, energy, and transport. He is also driven by a desire to help support countries in Asia that are impacted by increased severe weather and climate change. Today, he will be speaking about leveraging public and private sector engagement to meet SAHF priorities. Over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for the introduction. My name is Kumar Margasahim, and today I'll briefly be touching upon how do you leverage public and private sector engagement to meet with SAHF priorities. Can we go on to the next slide, please? Now, as everyone is aware, South Asia is prone to a number of disasters, right? Lightning being one of them. Every year, India loses almost about 2,000 people due to lightning. And so does Bangladesh lose about 400 people due to lightning. Other disasters include flooding and urban flooding, and the incidences of these have been rising. We have seen that. Also heat waves and drought. Now, some of the challenges in setting up public-private sector engagements include investment, right? Whether this investment comes from the public, private entity, or is there a possibility of a hybrid model? And about setting up a sustainable infrastructure. So how do you do it? Can infrastructure be sustained not just for the project duration, but for a much longer term, let's say for 10 years? Because typically projects throughout the region run either for 3 years or 5 years, but if you can set up an infrastructure which can run for 10 years, that's great. The third aspect is data sharing and interoperability. Okay, so you have this infrastructure in place, but data is coming in, but is this data interoperable or ingestible with various applications? So these are some of the key issues that we'll dwell on. Can we move to the next slide, please? Yeah, so in today's PowerPoint, I actually basically wanted to cover 3 examples where there is the public-private engagement and how that's been successful in some of these situations. Let's move to the next slide, please. So Odisha is a state in the eastern part of India, which is impacted by severe weather, which includes lightning and thunderstorms. as well as flooding, flash floods, and cyclones. So in 2016-17, Odisha used to have about 400 deaths every year caused due to lightning. So in 2017, they started engaging with Earth networks and said, hey, can you support reducing the reduction of lightning deaths in the states? So this is a good example of a public-private enterprise, because what Earth Networks came up is in saying that, we will come and set up the sustainable infrastructure for you, which will run for 10 years and will provide you with services. This is something which the Odisha State Disaster Management Authority, which is the nodal agency for disasters in Odisha, agreed upon and then signed a 10-year agreement where the entire infrastructure was invested by Earth Networks and put in place and running for 10 years, right? And so based on this particular infrastructure, so what Earth Networks was able to provide is basically a service to the state where they had storm tracking and the entire visualization platform, providing the alerts and the dangerous thunderstorm alerts, as well as siren systems. And this included an end-to-end lightning-based early warning systems. So post 2018, post the implementation of this particular network and its use effectively, the state saw a reduction of about 30% reduction in deaths due to lightning in the state of Odisha. So this is one example where the private entity came and set up sustainable infrastructure, and the public entity is using this infrastructure to send out alerts and save lives. Next slide, please. Yes, so this is the end-to-end dissemination service, which was adopted in Odisha. As you can see from here, it's the alerts are sent over email, SMS, there's the sirens through public media, as well as social media networks as well. Next slide, please. So one of the interesting factors in Odisha was that we were able to collaborate with RIMES as well and input a lot of our data through a simple API into the RIMES decision support tool. Now that helped RIMES also to distribute the alerts in a timely manner to people across the state of Odisha through their mobile app, Satark, as well as through the decision support system as well. Now, this partnership has now also been enhanced to the state of Tamil Nadu, which is in the southernmost corner of India, where RIMES is disseminating the lightning and the severe weather alerts as well. Next slide, please. So here is Peru, of course, not within the region, but I thought this was an interesting case where this is primarily for setting up an early warning flood system. The project sponsor is ARCC, which is Peru's reconstruction agency. And the key objectives of this project is to mitigate coastal flooding, mudslides, flash floods, and to detect heavy rainfall. So ARCC decided to award this project to a consortium. The consortium consists of several partners, right, from different parts of the world. So GCZ is an EPC contractor. Telegrafia is a Slovakian manufacturer of sirens and notification systems. Advanced radar company ARC provides the radar and software solutions. And the Advanced Environmental Monitoring family of companies, they provide a number of both meteorological as well as hydrological equipment, as well as a lightning network. Next slide, please. So this consortium approach was quite interesting because, as you can see, this is a rough architecture about how this entire project is being modeled right now. So on the left-hand top corner, you see the observational network, which is being set up. Below that is a lightning detection network. And then you have the hydrological monitoring network being set up, right, which consists of your radar, water level sensors, velocity meters, and others. And then below that, you have data coming in from an actual radar, which is going to be deployed as part of this project. Now, all of this data is assimilated into a centralized data collection, processing, and analysis platform, and then is seamlessly distributed to the public through SMS, through mobile applications, through Siren, and also to various stakeholders. Next slide, please. So Assam is a state in the northeast of India. This is quite an interesting case study of how potential competitors within the weather world can work together. So Earth Networks implemented a lightning early warning system for the state of Assam in 2020. This was primarily focused on lightning and severe weather based on lightning data. But then in 2021, ASDMA, which is the disaster management agency in the state of Assam, came back to Earth Networks and said, hey, can you help us including other weather data from other private companies? So they wanted the IBM graph model, which is from IBM, the weather company, as well as tomorrow.io, and a couple of other weather providers like Harris, primarily for forecast. So since Earth Networks couldn't do that, I mean, we got in a company called Comunidad, which is basically a weather aggregator, and they're agnostic, right? So they can get different types of weather data from different companies in simple API formats, integrate all those, and push out what exactly the disaster management authority needs into their operations center in terms of forecasts, in terms of alerts and all that. And this is then, relayed from the operations center or the emergency control center through SMS, email, or through public media to communities. So this is a really good example because, like Hitesh was pointing out earlier, while RIMES is building a similar platform, right, such platforms do exist. And here the difference is it's not just the data coming in from the observation networks, which the state of Assam had set up, but also through different private entities as well. And this could again be enhanced not just for this particular purpose, but it includes weather data, climate data, environmental data, and basically observational data, satellite data, as well as model data. So it's a form of aggregation where you get lots of different data sources and then can get aggregated. So these are three examples I just wanted to show, quite different from each, in terms of how a potential public-private engagement could be successfully run. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kumar, for elaborating how a public-private partnership can deliver results in terms of disaster monitoring and early warning and disaster risk reduction ultimately. Thank you very much for all our presenters for very informative presentations. And now, moving on, we have a panel discussion coming forward, and the topic of panel discussion is harnessing innovations in observation systems and enhancing effectiveness of O&M to meet SAHF priorities, global weather enterprise. And this panel discussion will be moderated by Dr. Alice Soris and Dr. K.J. Ramesh. So I would like to invite our panelists to take the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome to the Session 5 panel discussion. As the impacts of weather extremes increases in frequency and severity in South Asia, it is essential that we can provide accurate and timely warnings that enable early action and response. Meteorological and hydrological observations are fundamental to our ability to forecast risks to lives, livelihoods, and critical infrastructure. They are the basis of our knowledge of the climate system, initialize numerical models, allow verification of forecasts, and enable forecasts to be scaled down to be useful to protect people and assets likely to be impacted. Observational networks are also the most expensive component of many meteorological and hydrological services, and with limited budgets are often difficult to sustain. Our distinguished panelists will explore some of the issues that contribute to the fragility of observational networks and potential solutions to ensure long-term sustainability. I would like now to welcome our 6 panelists, and please turn on your cameras. So we have Simon Brown from UK Met Office, Jagadish Karmacharya from the Department of Hydrology and Meteorology, Nepal, Eric Anderson from the European Centre for Medium Range Weather Forecasts and the European Commission, Ali Sharif from the Maldives Meteorological Service, Jerry Linguasa from the Disaster Risks Solutions, South Africa, and Pisvrini Vasulu from Astra Microwave Private Limited in India. Panelists are requested to keep their initial interventions to 5 minutes only. Please do it. Ramesh and I will introduce them one by one as we are calling upon their interventions. These first interventions will be followed by several questions, specifically targeted to individual or a couple of panelists, depending on their expertise and experiences. Let's start this panel discussion with the intervention from Simon Brown. Simon is the Services Director in the UK Met Office. As Service Director, Simon is accountable for the delivery of Met Office services delivered to users, ranging from observations to operational forecasts and warnings for public and industry users. Simon, over to you.
Happy Wednesday to a global audience, and thank you for having me, and thank you for the very insightful presentations from the presenters, which covered a range of things from the challenges on a sparsely populated observations network, as well as remote areas, into kind of the global WMO policies. And I thought it was really interesting then to have some real strong examples of application of that observations data from European Space Agency and RIMES. And I think excitingly for me at the end, given I cover an observations role and a forecasting role for the UK Met Office, some real live end-to-end examples of turning observations through to forecasting into early warning systems. So fascinating, and thank you. It's absolutely true to say, from an observations perspective, the Met Office UK operation is not cheap to run. We are in a privileged position where the UK government have funded over a number of years some substantial investments. And I think key for us has often been around the early warning for UK government, warming them up to the investment required, not just the capital investment, but also the ongoing operation and maintenance funding, which many of these observations networks require. And that also includes the collaboration work we have with European bodies such as UMetNet and UMetSat, where we regularly pitch to UK government for funding for ongoing kind of surface-based observations and satellite observations. And that's, we have a huge team of people working behind the scenes to do that. And I don't think that should be underestimated. We absolutely recognise that we can no longer do this alone, though. So we've been very internally looking. We've often built our own assets. We often haven't collaborated. But the Internet of Things is moving on. Technology is moving on. Infrastructure is moving on. And it is absolutely essential now that the UK Met Office and other Hydromet services look to collaborate with the private sector, academia, targeting investment at kind of the latest observations. Pace is key. And I think one of the things I would say is there are expertise outside Hydromet services on things like technology and infrastructure, which Met services can't necessarily provide. And actually Met services should focus on where they can add advancements such as the data quality, and getting that data and influencing UK and global policy. We clearly are supportive of the WMO data policy principles, and we're absolutely delighted that's taken place. We've been an organisation which has sold data in the past, but we recognised a few years ago, actually free and open data supports UK government's drive to deliver economic benefit. And that's a difficult ask, I guess, for developing countries. We rely on some of that commercial income, but I think longer term, the assessment around social economic benefits and opening that free data access up is critical. There clearly are many barriers. Funding is clearly a barrier for developing countries. And I think by collaborating with the private sector, thinking about the long-term costs, not just the capital costs, is key to enabling a sustainable observations infrastructure. So I'm going to leave it there and wait for the questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Brown, Simon Brown, for your guidance, how to interact with, engage with the private sector in improving the quality of services. It is wonderful to listen from you, and this is what is the experience required for the region, how to effectively use the competencies, expertise available with the Global Weather Enterprise, aligning with National Weather Services to improve the forecast. So we'll have the questions subsequently after the panelists' initial introduction is done. Now I would like to introduce our next panelist, Mr. Jagadish Karmacharya, the Deputy Director General of Department of Hydrology and Meteorology, Nepal, who is chairing the session as well. He has also served as the National Project Director of the Pilot Program for Climate Resilience, Building Resilience to Climate-Related Hazards project in Nepal, which is under implementation by the department, and as Project Manager of FNEP-1 and FNEP-3 projects. I now request Dr. Jagadish for his presentation on this panel, and the floor is yours, Dr. Jagadish.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ramesh. And again, once again, greetings from my side to all the presenter, panelists, our moderator, and our audience. So our today's session is on observational system and regional exchange for monitoring and prediction of extremes. So I would like to share some of my experiences. I just mentioned our project, which was completed last year. So PPCR BRCS project, which ran from around middle of 2013 and completed towards the end of 2020. So under this project, one of the key activity or heart of the project, we can say, was to modernize our observation network, both automatic weather stations as well as hydrological stations. We installed around 88 automatic weather stations and 70 hydrological stations. I had the opportunity to become the project manager in this project in early 2019. And at that time, around 1/3 of installation stations has been installed, but others were due. And though the contract for the installation of those stations was around only 18 months or less than that, but when I became the project manager, it was already 2 years. And actually it took, we were able to complete the installation only towards the very end. Our project ended in November 2020, and only at the very end we were able to commission all the stations. So from the experience we had in implementing installation of this and also other activities which carried out under this project, what I think is it's really important that we start detailed planning at the onset. Planning is the key, I think. We need to do adequate planning so that we face less problem later on. So some of the factors I think we need to consider are network design and site selection, We need to make sure that our network captures meets the requirement and fill up the gap. We should be careful about the station type and sensor, as well as available budget during the installation, and then later on also. Also, we need to make sure what type of communication mode of communication we are going to be installing. It is satellite based or this mobile based technology. So the running cost will be different. So these all factors needs to be considered during the planning phase. And next, once we make all those plans, we need to consider about this procurement plan and budget allocation. Generally, either through our national budget or through our developing partners, when we implement through various projects, it's very essential that we make a very sound and good procurement plan. Often we have faced that because our document were not clear enough, because we were not careful enough to put the things like in terms of specifications, in terms of availability of goods in the market. We have often faced during the implementation, we will face problem, and to overcome those problem, time flies away, and the allocated time is not enough at all. Also, we need to make sure that what kind of mode of payment we are going to implement. This kind of thing we need to be careful about. Now, once we have the station, I think this data exchange is very important, not only in the regional scale, but also in the global scale. There also we are facing a couple of challenges. We have been trying to transfer our data to our regional centers. We have talked with China, Japan, and even India also, but this things is still not very totally completed. So though we are in the final phase, we are still only able to send our SNOP manual observation. The rest, we are in the final phase of submission through China. So we'll be sharing about 20 stations data in AWS data very soon. So with that, I will stop here. So we'll hear more later. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jagadish. You brought important aspects to the table: the modernization of the networks, the detailed planning at early stages to avoid problems later on during implementation. You also mentioned challenges that you are facing, also in terms of communications and sharing the data. And we are talking about sharing data regionally and globally. So these are important aspects that we need to address. We'll come back to some of these issues during the questions later on. Now I would like to invite our next panelist, Eric Anderson, who is seconded by the European Centre for Medium Range Weather Forecasts to the European Commission, where he works in the Copernicus Earth Observation Program. And for WMO, Eric is leading the expert team on Earth Observing System Design and Evolution. Eric, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Alice. Thanks for having me, and thanks for inviting me to give a couple of perspectives in this panel. I prepared just 2 slides to help me make a couple of points right from the start. So that's just a title page mentioning the colleagues that I've been working on this with. Here we are. Yeah, so first I want to acknowledge what we heard from Itesh Dash in his presentation, the close cooperation that is taking place between RIMES and ECMWF. We saw that taking fruit in the data exchange platform that RIMES is developing. And I think that's a really good example because it builds on the simple idea that improved access to regional observations, in this case, will improve the quality of the forecasts in that region. So you saw from his schematic that by providing the additional observations to ECMWF forecast in this case, or ECMWF models, will result in a benefit for the region in terms of improved forecasts. And that's possible because of the very high resolution in which global forecasts are now being run, that they can benefit from, also from quite high resolution observational data that previously perhaps were only available to nationally or regionally. So this is a very important initiative for us. And one of the important aspects there, of course, is the homogenization of data formats and data quality that such a platform implements. So ECMWF and RIMES have had a cooperation agreement in place for quite a while now, and that is set to continue. On the WMO side, I think we are now really at a very historic moment, as we've heard that both GBON, SOF, and the new data policy have been approved recently. And all of those, they really emphasize the importance of what within WMO is called the Earth System Approach. The Earth System Approach is something that both NWP and climate monitoring nowadays is totally based on. That in order to improve atmospheric forecasts or atmospheric climate monitoring, observations of the other Earth system domains are really needed. They're not only nice to have, they are absolutely required. And I think that's a new situation that has developed in the past 10 years. And these developments, recent developments in WMO, will really set us up for improved data exchange across all Earth observation domains. So that includes hydrology, ocean, land surface, and also atmospheric composition. There is a global counterpart of the European flood alert system that I want to also mention. There could be a potential further input, I guess, to the global exchange mechanism, because it's quite unusual to have global forecasting systems for hydrology. Obviously, local forecasting systems are beneficial where they exist, but here there is a data set provided by the European Commission in this case, which is EU funded and therefore associated with free and open data policy. And it could be an additional data set that I would suggest could, if there's interest from RIMES, be incorporated in the data exchange mechanism. Not only flood forecasting, because the Copernicus program, that's EU funded, provides so many other important data sets, including air quality and aerosols, for instance, that may be of interest. The second slide is just a map of, as an example, if you move on the slide to the last one, I will take just a second on that slide. It's just an illustration to show the sparseness, in this case, of hydrological river flow data that is available to ECMWF and to the European Commission's flood forecasting service right at the moment. And why I'm showing that is that I want to make the point that exchange of such data is required for two reasons. One is for model initialization, but equally important is it's for model validation. And that can be done not in real time, whereas for initialization, real-time data is required. And we're really seeking partners, and RIMES is already a partner in this respect, for performance evaluation of models and forecasts, which is a really important mechanism by which ECMWF gets access to local knowledge and local data for validation of its forecast. I'll stop here, and I'm looking forward to answering any questions that may come in a minute. Thank you.
Very much for your insights and trying to emphasize the local data availability for critical applications like flood forecasting and other aspects. Now, if we have to view it as an Earth system observation network, now very true that apart from atmospheric ocean, and we need to share the air quality environmental data also, so that already Copernicus has shown the air quality forecasts, which are very useful at the global sense, the way medium range forecast of ECMWF was showing earlier. To drive country scale air quality models and other activities to be driven. Thanks very much. We'll discuss more on these interesting aspects during the course of this panel discussion. Now I'll have the pleasure of inviting Ali Sharif, Deputy Director General of Maldives Meteorological Service, and the focal point for RIMES Secretariat in various intergovernmental coordination groups. I'll invite now Ali Sharif for his comments and opening remarks on this particular panel. Ali Sharif, please.
Sharif sir, your mic is muted.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Chair and Vice Chair. Dr. Ellis and Dr. Ramesh, it's good to see you. Happy Wednesday to distinguished delegates. I hope you can hear me now.
Yes, please, go ahead.
Well, observations and monitoring of the entire land, ocean, atmosphere, and the interrelated environment from the foundation of the production of weather, climate, water, and related environmental services. Observations are also vital for research to improve services, assessing changes in the climate systems, and developing and operating systems in weather and climate-dependent sectors. Where Maldives is concerned, the tourism, fishing, and agriculture. In support of these community efforts to reduce disaster risks and adapt to climate variability and change. Observation and monitoring are important pillars of the global framework for climate services as well. Therefore, we, National Meteorological and Hydrological Services in developing countries, try to establish and operate observation networks such as surface observation stations, automatic stations, up-air stations, weather radar, satellite ground stations, and sometimes aircraft observations. Additionally, for countries belonging to coastal areas, ocean data buoys and weather ships observation are crucial elements. The observational data are being exchanged through WMO Global Observing System, component of WMO Integrated Global Observing System, WIGOS. The Global Observing System is comprised of operationally reliable surface and space subsystems. These subsystems are owned and operated by WMO members, which undertake to meet certain standards and responsibilities as part of the agreed global system for the benefit of all nations. Here it is important to note that developing states lacks capability maintaining WMO requirements and set standards. Many countries in South Asia region are facing these issues. Maldives being the lowest lying country in the world, which could be, it's very difficult for me to say that, submerged, in distant future. But the evidences are there. The European Space Agency and other scientists, they are giving the evidence of rising sea level rise. And here also we have noted down about 4 millimeter per year increase in sea level. So this is the reality. We have to believe it. And it is very sad to note that weather hazard fundamentals are intensifying. Hotter weather, with longer and highly variable monsoon seasons, flood, drought, cyclones, sea swell surge, and even longer periods of stronger winds causing rough seas continues to pose serious risks. Even this year, this November, since the start of this November, we are having stronger winds. Extraordinary case is this throughout up now the 17 days of rough seas. Very difficult for our sea travelers to cope with their daily routines. An important aspect of this forum is stated, learning from each other, which involves developing solutions to the meteorological and hydrological service delivery challenges that are unique to our region, and we should act upon this line. One of the ways that come to my mind is WMO's country hydromet diagnostic tool, through which developing countries in South Asia region could address existing challenges and gaps. So far, I can see only Afghanistan and Maldives in South Asia region involved in country hydromet tool. I request RIMES and World Bank and other partners to explore participation of more countries in the program. The country hydromet diagnostics respond to the need for standard, integrated, and operational tool and approach for diagnosing national meteorological services, their operating environment, and their contribution to high quality weather, climate, hydrological, and environmental information services and warning. The diagnostic aims at informing policy and investment decision-making, in particular guiding investments of the members of Alliance for Hydromet Development. The Alliance brings together major development and climate finance partners behind a joint commitment to strengthen developing country hydromet capacity. Though the diagnostic developed countries are expected to benefit from better targeted and through the these diagnostics, the developing countries are expected to benefit from better targeted and aligned financial and technical support. I think the main objective of South Asia Hydromet Forum also emphasizes on addressing these elements. The country hydromet diagnostics is based on 10 most critical elements of hydromet value cycle, grouped under 4 categories: enablers, observation and data processing system, service and production and dissemination, and user and stakeholder interaction. The assessment of the critical elements of the National Meteorological Service lead to their maturity level. Now, if time allows, I will highlight some of the summaries of Maldives gaps that has been audited when done the peer review. Our lowest level was taken as contribution to climate service, because we have to develop and implement basic climate services such as proper climate database management system, preparation of various climate data products based on sectorial needs, alert and advisories at extended and medium scales to various sectors such as tourism, health, transport, energy, etc. Second one is the contribution to hydrology. We had to improve interaction with the hydrological sectors and providing the climate information and forecast QPF in different temporal scales. The QPE, quantitative precipitation estimate derived from satellite products, are available, which are mainly used for nowcasting application. There is no standard operation procedure here for the exchange of information between Maldives Meteorological Service and hydrological agencies. A new project is being initiated to identify potential areas of rainfall harvesting and provide this information to island communities. I think this will improve our level of in this category. And the next one is the use and national value of products and services. We need formalized platform to engage with users in order to co-design improved services and to conduct independent user satisfaction surveys more frequently. We have to do this. And our satisfactory level at medium levels are governance and institutional setting. However, we have to more emphasize on develop new infrastructures, facilities with funding support from government or international assistance for enhanced operation services and support in-house research activities to implement strategic plans as per the strategic action plan. The sufficient level services which we provide but needs further enhancement, effective partnership to improve service delivery. We are having enhanced partnership with national stakeholders like NDMA and national climate agencies to further improve various components of early warning system, such as observation network, extreme weather monitoring, development of climate database, generate forecasts at various spatial and temporal scales, co-design and co-develop tailor-made weather and climate application products. A permanent training and capacity building facility of weather and climate services for MMS officials and other stakeholders is also need to be set up. Observational infrastructure, we have to improve, share the data from AWS networks through the GTS and establish an integrated system of reception, monitoring, archival, quality check, and management of weather, climate, and data.
Dr. Sharif, brief.
Thank you.
You should conclude.
Oh, yes, I will cut short. Substantial efforts have been made to expand observational networks, technical skills, and computing resources through national investments. However, it is still not adequate to build the capacity to achieve demands by users' community. With this, I would conclude with the impression that if our ocean observation capability got established, as you would know, our nation lies in the ocean away from land masses and where the data are sparse. And if we are able to record and archive accurate sea surface temperatures, ocean-based hazard warnings can be dramatically improved. Risks and impacts on marine life, fisheries, and coral bleaching prediction can also be enhanced further, benefiting not only Maldives, the whole region, and the world weather as a whole. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ali, for bringing the experiences of an island state that is quite different than what we have before. And you highlighted important aspects, how fundamental are observations for NMHSs, also the pillars for the global framework for climate services. You brought issues and challenges in relation to keeping the standards for global exchange. You also mentioned aspects that are important, and exchange is important at regional and global level, but also at the national level between Met and Hydro institutions. You mentioned the importance of diagnostic tools to advocate and align financing to help you to get financing, and many other aspects that are important, and we will take note of all these issues and follow up. We need to follow our discussion. Now I would like to invite Jerry Linguasa, the director and founder of the Disaster Risk Solutions, an international consulting company based in South Africa. He's the former Assistant Secretary General and Deputy Secretary General of the World Meteorological Organization, a former CEO of the South African Weather Service, and a former teacher at the university. So Jerry brings sectors, and also from the WMO has a specialized agency for weather, climate, water, and environmental related aspects. So Jerry, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Soares. It's a pleasure to see you again after a long while, and Dr. Ramesh, all colleagues from around the world. It's a pleasure again to meet you and to see you virtually. And that we all survived the pandemic. And it's a privilege for me to participate in this session today. I do not have any slides. As a result, I will just speak of the CAF, and thank you very much for the earlier interventions that were made, because I think they served to give us a very good platform for our discussion. I just chose, for purposes of our discussion, a theme for my intervention, which is be cognizant of the past, but not constrained by it. And I say this from the perspective that for 70 years of WMO's existence, so let me start where you're most familiar with me in the WMO. For the 70 years or so of WMO's existence, I think the key has always been about how to advance atmospheric sciences and I'll call it the art and science of forecasting and prediction. Now, this has been sustained from the very outset. And remember, this is also part of the institutions that came out of the aftermath of World War II, where the world was trying to find a different way of dealing with challenges. And so international coordination became one of the key pillars of how to create a new and peaceful world. Meteorology was not, in a sense, we piggybacked on that as scientists to see how we could advance the science, which required observations from across the world done in a standardized fashion where everyone basically did the same thing towards the common purpose of improving forecasting and prediction skills across the world. But I think one of the key challenges from the very outset was always about funding. And so over time, as we evolved as National Meteorological and Hydrological Services and the WMO, was always finding where the money is going to come from to sustain the science and to sustain observation networks throughout the world and to allow everyone who has a stake to play to do so. And as a result, I think one of the key things that we are concerned with even today is about sustainability of those observations, not only at a national level, at a regional level, but also at a global level. But I think it is also important to then also accept that in the 70 years, a lot has changed around us and a lot has changed in the world. What are the things that have changed in the world? One of them is that we basically have a serious challenge now of climate change. And climate change, so I'm just going to change the setting here. And climate change is basically an existential problem and a challenge for the whole world. And the whole world is looking to us as scientists to say, how do we provide the answers required to some of those questions that have been posed? And having just completed the 26th Conference of the Parties, which is the 26th chance to address the challenge of climate change, has again brought to the surface the challenge that being an existential challenge for most, and a developmental challenge and economic challenge for most countries. And here for Asia, one of the fastest growing economic areas in the world with some of the highest population numbers, right? And therefore the highest number of people at risk to these climate extremes. The question then becomes, how do we ensure that we continue to provide sustainable services, high quality services, products and services to everyone? And this is where I think that we need to think of a new model of service, which is a customer first model. And the reason I say this is because having been in academia and having been in the private sector and now back in the private sector in a way, and having been part of the public service through the WMO and also nationally, it is quite clear that one of our history, or one of the things that constrains us as National Meteorological and Hydrological Services, is that we're actually conflicted. And the conflict comes from the fact that, one, we are there to advance the science, and therefore observations are a key component of that, to be able to advance the science. But we are also then expected to be service providers in terms of reaching the end user with products and services. And frankly, these are two very different roles and responsibilities. And one of the key aspects for doing the services part has historically been to try and get Met Services to also raise money, right, to cover the costs of what is the most expensive part of a Met Service, which is the observation networks, the communications, et cetera, et cetera. And so as we evolve and we still face this existential challenge, the question then becomes, is there a way in which we can find the space to get those that may be well skilled in providing the services component and working with them rather than against them or them against us, in other words, working in an adversarial fashion, but rather in a cooperative fashion. And I won't go through the slides of one of the speakers who already spoke earlier, Dr. Kumar, who basically mentioned a whole host of innovations that are happening around the world in terms of cooperation between the private sector and the public sector, especially in the services side. But as I draw my conclusion on, or at least move quickly towards the end of my first level intervention, is that one of the key challenges that we face is that there are those who, using the latest technologies, cloud, artificial intelligence, historical data, are now moving very rapidly towards this customer first service, where they are not interested in the complexities of generating the science, but are simply technology companies that are able to take access to what is already exists, write algorithms for artificial intelligence, and provide the kind of intelligence at the level of the customer that the customer requires. In other words, it does not even go through multiple committees, structures. Yesterday, I sat in one of the sessions, and I heard about the complexity of trying to get a regional agricultural advisory, and all kinds of structures were being suggested, which were adding complexity to a process. There are others who bypass our bureaucratic government-oriented bureaucracies and go straight to the client by asking the client what they require and then providing them the solutions that they need. And in this case, some of them have gone even to the New York Stock Exchange and other exchanges and are listed and are getting the money to advance the science in rapid ways that we have not seen before, to the point where today it is not abnormal to find a 7-day high resolution 1 meter wildfire risk mapping solution or zoning solution for those countries where wildfires are a challenge through the climate extremes. So others are finding ways like NOAA and Google, NOAA and Tomorrow.io for the microsatellites, which have not yet been mentioned in any of our discussions to date in the last 3 days. And so I'm just posing these as saying there are challenges. The challenge is real. The existential challenge of climate change is real. And there are those that are finding ways of reaching decision makers on solutions to risk mitigation that they can find. And so how do we then make sure that national meteorological and hydrological services are not left behind? And I think this is where RIMES has a key role to play as a regional institution to ensure that not only is the technology side of things sorted, but it's also that it does the mechanisms, the guidance on enterprise collaboration, the case studies to put these together, but also to be an enabler for the conversations that are required to ensure that all members are able to participate and fulfill their roles of both advancing the science, but also improving services, hopefully through collaboration with others that can help advance and make sure that these answers that are sought by decision makers are provided to them in the shortest possible time. I look forward to the questions later on. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thanks very much, Jerry. As always, you have been forceful in bringing the priority activities and concerns where the gaps exist between NMHS and the users, where in a competitive service delivery environment now, because commercial activities are affected by the climate extremes. And now RIMES, as you suggested, RIMES has to play a role to bridge that knowledge gap and the capacity gaps. And at the same time, now we are fortunate that the recent WMO data policy and GBON supported by SAHF will address some of the critical issues associated with the observations. In a regional sense, at least basic networks are not sustained. The quality of forecasts and services will definitely affected. And that's where the fortune time, best time now, WMO could able to get SAHF commitment to help the SDCs and seeds, LDCs and seeds, for example, to start with in those countries. And regional platforms like RIMES and other institutions of WMO will work together to build those gaps and taking the capabilities available from the private sector to leverage the delivery requirements at the earliest. Thank you very much again bringing out these important aspects. Now I request the panelists, next panelists of this session, P. Srinivasulu, who is General Manager and for Research and Development of an Indian company, Astra Microwave Private Limited, wherein they have so many observing systems, a range of systems made, starting from automatic weather stations to Doppler weather radars, communication systems, microwave transmitters, antennas, etc. Now I request Dr. Srinivasulu. He has experience from the Indian Space Research Organization before joining this company. I request him for briefly bring out the capabilities of the company to help the services currently and the opportunities for the future. Over to you, Dr. Srinivasulu.
Hello, good afternoon and good evening to all of you. I'm Srinivasulu. I'm General Manager at Astra Microwave Products Limited. I'm working here for the last 7 years, and earlier I worked in Indian Space Research Organization I worked for 23 years. So I would like to, can you please share my presentation for a few minutes?
Already it is there.
Yeah. Can you go to the next slide? Go to the next slide, please. Yeah, we are involved, we are engaged in the design and development of subsystems, modules, as well as total end-to-end systems in the fields of meteorology, radar, electronic warfare, space and missile electronics domains. This presentation, I'm going to highlight a few slides on specific products, what we have developed and installed. Next slide, please. Basically, this is an automatic weather station, the first product. We have delivered 2,000 numbers. About 2,000 numbers in India and Nepal and other countries. And basically, this has different sensors, temperature, humidity, pressure, and wind speed sensors. So this is basically two models are available, both satellite as well as GPRS models are available. So we have a headquarters in Delhi to get entire data, and it is disseminated to different service agencies. Application agencies. Next slide, please. This is similar to the previous one, but this is an Agro Metrology product driven by CRIDA in Hyderabad. The only difference here is we have more sensors here, like soil temperature and soil, it's kind of radiation sensor, rainfall sensors, both. So this is almost similar. This is also like a satellite based as well as GPRS based. We can get data through either net or through satellite. Next slide, please. And this is a buoy system where where there is a scarcity in the ocean and sea levels. We can deploy these units and we can measure a lot of sea surface temperature as well as other parameters. Next slide, please. I'll click it. And this is a wind profiler where a fixed point in the fixed point location, you will get a time height variability of horizontal wind as well as vertical wind. And we have installed some systems in India. Next. This is a atmospheric radar. We call it as a stratospheric tropospheric radar, normally used to study the dynamics of the atmosphere. We'll engage this system. So we are developing this. Next slide, please. And this is we have got the order from Indian Meteorological Department for 10 numbers of X-band Doppler weather radars. We have developed all the 10. We have installed 4 numbers in the Himalayan regions, and the other 6 are in the pipeline for installation. So here, this is an X-band dual pole solid state Doppler weather radar with a range coverage up to 100 kilometers with 13 dBg sensitivity and with a range resolution of 75 meters. Next, please. And this is the Earth station we have developed for IMD in headquarters at Delhi. And this will be getting data from 3 satellites in INSAT series, 3D, 3DR, and 3A. From here, we'll get we have developed the end-to-end system for data, signal reception as well as front-end receivers with a lot of redundancy. And there is a processing, and this data is being given to the through IMD, and it is going to different application agencies, service agencies. Next, please. Our future is going to be we are basically an RF company. We have expertise in solid state transmitters. So we are aiming to upgrade the klystron-based weather radars into solid state based radars. Then E-scan Doppler weather radar, where in the elevation domain you can adopt electronic scanning, whereas in the azimuth direction, you can still go with the mechanical steering. Then we are developing avalanche detection radars. This is the latest development. So this is this is my last slide. However, I would like to bring a few points in addition to this. Basically, the meteorology is largely driven by the governmental agencies, whether it is a basic research, whether it is instrumentation, whether it is application. So far, predominantly it is driven by the government agencies. But compared to the defense and military radars or sensors, in weather domain and the meteorology domain, the funding is not available. That's why the sensors are very scarce. Due to scarcity in the sensors, our modeling normally it will not go very accurate. So it is an interconnection between the financial support to this field, as well as we had to do some kind of research and application related studies. The involvement of private sector in the third world countries, particularly in India, I think in last 1 or 2 decades, the private industry has surged ahead. Earlier, they used to tail around the government agencies, but now they are able to, their capabilities have gone up, right from the module level to sensor level to the subsystem level, as well as up to the end-to-end system level, they are able to deploy. So this is a big advantage for the governmental agencies to take partnership of private industries. The only, there are problems in this public-private partnership. I'm sure the managers from the government side, they are trying to address this. So basically, a model is to be evolved in which the efficiencies of both governmental as well as private industries to be synergized in a best possible manner. This is my last one. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Sri Vasu, for bringing the experience of the private sector in the development and innovative solutions, observing systems and products for meteorology application. I have checked with the organizers, and we are allowed to still have 15 minutes to have discussions and a few questions. So I'll ask our panelists to be brief in the answers, and I'll start with a question to 2 of our panelists, Simon and Jagadish. This question is related to the total cost of ownership. Is a phrase used to encompass the life cycle cost of observational systems. And in your experience, are governments willing or able to take this into account when providing capital and funds to support to operations and maintenance of networks? it isn't obvious that government leaders that support NMHS fully understand the high operating costs and the need to plan for replacement. Are there things that can be done to improve to support governments for long-term sustainability of critical infrastructure? So Simon and Jagadish, do you want to comment on that? Thanks.
Sure. While we wait for Simon, I will share some perspective from Nepal, our own perspective. Yeah, you're right. It's difficult to have operational budget, assurance of operational budget. Generally, what happens is that these infrastructures are generally installed in a project basis. But often we are finding it difficult to have the necessary human resources and the financial support for its regular maintenance and operation. During this implementation of this BRCS project also, there was a lot of emphasis on that. And we have been successful to some extent, but still, maybe, I mean, our experience is short in terms of the modern technology we have used. Partly it could be due to the COVID pandemic that focus is a little shifted to health sector, related sector. But generally, it's difficult to have sufficient budget allocated. And I mean, we are trying hard, showing that if those are not maintained, then those investment will be in a sense lost, because if we don't get the necessary information on the continuous basis, then there is no use of making investment. Suppose the life of equipment with regular maintenance will be say 10, 20 years, 25 years, but if we don't do that, then they will be defunct in less than 4-5 years. So we are trying to convince them. Thank you.
Thank you, Jagadish. Simon, can you now?
Yeah, no, thank you. To get myself off mute, so thank you for that. Usual virtual issues we've all experienced in the last 18 months. I sort of touched on this in my opening statement, really. So from a UK government perspective, we found them extremely supportive from a whole life cycle perspective, from commissioning new assets right through to kind of decommission. But and often it's the big investments which often take the most stakeholder management. The operating and maintenance costs, though, are clearly not cheap. And whenever we develop our business case, it's very much based on whole life costs and not just the initial capital investment. I think the additional, the kind of changes to the unified data policy give Met services such as the UK and everyone else globally the opportunity to have some very strong discussions with their governments to demonstrate the observation systems which are set out within the WMO policy. So I think that just brings strength to it. I think people just also need to consider that operation and maintenance costs aren't just about equipment. It's about training the workforce. It's about skills levels. It's about the logistics operations. It's much wider than just keeping a radar going or a marine buoy. There's a whole load of indirect costs, including people's own procurement departments, finance departments, etc. So for us, whole life cost isn't just about the capital investment and the kind of engineering support. It's much wider.
Thank you, Simon, for this guidance, and it is very important to address the life cycle maintenance requirements up to 10 years in one go at the time of procurement. It is a very good guidance. Some of the countries are following it, and we should advocate such a thing so that uninterrupted operations of observing systems can be expected. Thanks very much. Now I draw the attention of the panelists to address the question from our co-chair from DZ Myanmar. How do we enhance, strengthen regional NMH's sustained capabilities and capacities, competencies to handle calibration of land surface observations for quality observation to disseminate to the global observing systems and global community. I request the panelists to address this, particularly Jerry and Eric, to address and answer this question. Thank you. Over to you, please.
Thank you, sir. Yes, firstly, I would like to be sincerely thanks to organizer for inviting of this important meeting. I would like to be our experience. Previous time, our observation system is manually. 2014, we have changes of the manually to automated observation system. At this time, we have the challenges of the human resources and capacity building. In our country, we have the some of the development partner supporting of the different automated weather observation system, and we may need to be the integrated of the observation system. The one of the our main responsibility, and then we would like to be the sharing of the national to the regional cooperation with, for example, of the RISE, because I have a member of the RISE member, and one of the our this project is the maybe is the one. This is the integrated river basin management project. This project is the maybe the unfortunately maybe stored. Our data sharing system is stored, and I would like to be sharing of the historical data is the sharing of the RISE and CNWF. Another one is the least developing country, maybe the human resources and capacity building for the maintenance and operation system. Thank you.
Well, let me probably provide a small perspective from my previous experience of working as a head of a Met service in Southern Africa. I think one of the key things to enhance and to sustain capacities and capabilities and competencies is for directors of Met services and the institutions to work collaboratively. And I think for me, RIMES, for example, as an institution would play a very key role in that. And that goes to two things, really. One is regionalization of activity. So one of the things that we found very useful was capacity building, of course, aligned across the region. There will always be nuances of interests of individual countries, areas of emphasis, but I think the planning of capacity building aligned at a regional level is important. The second one is procurement plans, alignment of procurement plans, because you'd be surprised that if you all knew who was going to, in their plans for the year, was planning to, for example, upgrade their upper air sounding stations, and that you were able to then collaborate in, of course, laws and other things allowing in the region, that you could minimize input costs. For example, minimize significantly the cost, the unit cost of upper air soundings if you were able to procure them as a region rather than as an individual country. And that, I think, is one of the areas that has been raised in GBON as one of the key gaps, which would be addressed by SAHF. But we must also remember that SAHF is there really as a coordinating mechanism for donors to better coordinate their activities and try and get as much efficiency for the funding that they provide from those that receive it. So those days where different donors would come in at different angles with different interests at different times, I think those days are gone. That means also to be able to meet them halfway, there has to be a regional emphasis on planning, on capacity development, but also on ensuring that to meet the demands of GBON, there is that regional collaboration, talking to each other, planning together, and putting together a cohesive case for the region to be able to engage with SAHF, even though SAHF will go initially to small island developing states and to countries that are most in need. The fact is that they also belong, like the Maldives, belong to this group, and therefore it is important for the sub-region to understand what is happening there so that we can better leverage the investments that are being made in other areas to enhance the whole regional emphasis. So the question then, I think for me is better coordination, stronger coordination, even better contribution from everyone will enhance the capacity and shared competencies across the board to be able to meet the demands of the future.
May I come in as well? I heard my name mentioned in this context at the start of the question, and I'd like to highlight an additional issue with project-funded observation networks. We often find that those are put in place to satisfy one or a small number of stakeholders, and the data is then shared with those stakeholders or funders without also including in the project state the opportunity for data exchange. So data exchange on a technical basis requires a little bit of additional funding right from the onset to make it possible, if data policy allows, obviously, to make the data visible and available to others. Because the benefit of that simply is, in simple terms, would be that the data, the existence of the data becomes known to additional users, and additional stakeholders may, over time, be willing to contribute to its long-term sustainability. So I suppose what I'm saying is that where observing networks are funded through project funding, it would be very beneficial to include from the start funding of exchange mechanism, or taking that into account. And I am very pleased that the SAHF mechanism recognizes this and is looking to provide a mechanism for long-term funding right from the start. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Yeah, and thank you, Jerry. You brought important aspects to the table to bring in projects this issue of data exchange, and also aspects of regionalizing some of the capacity building procurement plans and so on. So these are critical aspects that SAHF will for sure take into consideration. I will now make a question that is in the chat coming from Arati in relation to innovative aspects. So I will address this question to Srinivasal. Is what are the innovative ways that the challenges of having observation in remote and hard to reach areas, for example, high altitudes or areas where regular communication networks are unavailable? So Srini, over to you. You are still muted. Thank you.
Yeah, can you repeat the question, please?
So the question is, what are the innovative ways that challenges that we have in observations in remote and hard to reach areas like high altitudes and areas where regular communication networks are unavailable? So what are the innovative ways to address these challenges?
One thing is this remote sensing is one thing. You can put remote sensing sensors and get the data from these locations. And also satellite is one option. And if you want in situ measurements, we have to take the pain of going there, reaching there and installing the thing. That we cannot avoid.
Thank you. Maybe we will do our last question to Ali in relation to how can private economic sectors such as tourism collaborate with the Maldives Meteorological Service in enhancing and maintenance of observation networks in Maldives? How can SAHF help in addressing these challenges? So over to you, Ali. How you link with the private sector, particularly with the tourism in your country, to sustain observations?
Thank you very much, Alice. This is a very good question, and we have been working on this recently for some time. Sometimes we get positive results, and I can say most of the tourism sector, all the tourists come here from different regions, and they require weather before their arrival and also during their stay in here. So some of the resorts, as some of you know, that all the resorts, every resort has one hotel, unique type style. You know, every island is one hotel. So these islands are scattered on the sea, and it may have a different kind of weather. You know, when you with regard to the nearest meteorological station. So we go to the resort operators and encourage. Some of them have allowed us to install automatic weather stations there, and then they give collaborations like when we make the maintenance trips there, they give free accommodation, and some of them they even provide their travel also, to those things. So I can say in our tourism sector, they are very weather sensitive, and they are very good. They have very good cooperation with Maldives Meteorological Service.
Thank you, Ali Sharif, for due response. And I now thank all the panelists for a very interesting discussion, and particularly bringing out to build the competencies, capabilities, and service delivery enhancements through regional cooperation, and taking advantage of the opportunities provided by now through GBAN and SAHF, particularly identifying critical Hydromet gaps, both in terms of observations and immediate extreme weather services, and meeting the user needs, etc. In the process, we should keep priority in giving life cycle. We should advocate for governments to fund the life cycle costs of the observing systems, so that their sustainability is ensured for a good time to come, and so that socio-economic benefits and all expected user sector outcomes can be realized through regional cooperation and knowledge building, etc. And for maintaining the observing systems, we can take the advantage of local companies, local people, local engineers to ensure the support services. And in the process, now so many regional companies, which you have seen one of the presentations, where Doppler weather radars, transmitters, and even antennas, everything from sensor to high-end observing systems are available, and they are selling in India. And thanks very much for coordinating nicely, Alice, and carrying on the discussions, and very grateful to the very esteemed and distinguished panelists. Over to the chairs for closing the session, please.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ramesh. So we have our co-chair from Myanmar, Dr. Hua Myo Oh, Director General, Department of Hydrology and Meteorology, Myanmar. So from my behalf, I would like to thank everyone for a very fruitful and exciting discussion. So maybe our co-chair from Myanmar has a few words, concluding remarks to make. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes. Thank you very much, all of the panelists for the all very useful and informative discussion and presentation. Today, everybody know climate change and disaster are more and more every year, and also extreme events are more frequently. The Hydromet and Hydro Service need to be more observation and prediction of weather exchange data is very important in current situation. Observation system and regional data exchange for monitoring and prediction or exchange is very important. All of the weather focus starting point is the observation. Currently cannot be alone because climate and disaster no boundary. Therefore, we may have together mass phase, for example, of the data sharing and monitoring and prediction. But some of the least developing countries have to be extended of their weather monitoring and technical challenges. Therefore, we may need to be there supporting from the development partner, urban, rural, and more, etc. Another important issue of the public-private sector engagement, because we may be maintenance observation system and extending of the monitoring and focusing system. Thank you all panelists and all participants.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jagadesh Karmacharya and Dr. Chomu for efficiently taking the lead in session 5. Thank you also, Dr. Alice Suarez and Dr. KJ Ramesh for actively moderating the panel discussion. Our thanks is also conveyed to the presenters and panelists for the rich insights. And of course, thank you to all the participants for your engagement in this session. Due to some technical difficulty, we can only include our co-chairs, moderators, presenters, and panelists for the group photo. So I kindly request session 5 co-chairs, moderators, and panelists to turn on, presenters and panelists, turn on your video for the group photo, please. And as usual, after the photo, the group photo, kindly participate everyone in the session poll to be administered by RIME's colleagues. So Itesh, just kindly send information if photo has been taken. And for everyone's information, the recordings of the sessions are available via YouTube. Our colleagues will be able to provide you the link to access these recordings. Also, the PowerPoint presentations are available on the event website. In case you have questions on accessing these materials, please don't hesitate to let us know, and we will correspond immediately on how you can access these and other issues.
Yeah, you're done.
Okay, thanks so much, Hitesh. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you all very much for your valuable participation in today's sessions. We now wrap up for today. Session 6 and the closing session will follow tomorrow. As usual, please connect via the same Zoom link provided to you. We will start at 5 UTC tomorrow. So again, thank you all very much, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. So again, requesting everyone to participate in the session poll. Thank you very much again, everyone.
Thank you and bye.